Let's find out now from its Parliamentary Coordinator Matthew Parks about what they thought about yesterday's SONA. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Welcome to the programme. All right, so take us through your thoughts as a trade union federation. Were you happy with what came out of the President's State of the Nation address?
Look, I think we appreciate that the President is facing the most difficult tasks of any president since the Madiba era. He's inherited an economy which is bleeding with barely 1% economic growth, 40% unemployment and thousands of workers being retrenched every month. And of course he's inherited a state which is badly incapacitated, state-owned enterprise on the verge of collapse, in particular Eskom. So we appreciate he's got a huge task on his shoulders. I think there were many things which felt were quite positive. His commitment, which is very clear, to building social compact with labour, with business, with community, to save Eskom, to save the SOEs, to turn the economy around. I think there's quite a few initiatives he's announced which we need to get more detail around creating jobs for young people. That's positive. The commitment to shift more funding and support for the industrialization programs of government, that is quite good. Equally, there's a significant amount of attention given towards higher education, building new residences, more funding for students, building new colleges, new universities. That's quite impressive. It's quite excellent. We appreciate also the progressive interventions around national health insurance, launching a state bank, developing a sovereign wealth fund. Those are quite progressive, radical proposals that we've long been calling for as Cosatu. So we appreciate those. But I think perhaps the most critical concern for us is simply, can government implement these progressive commitments? The speech is progressive, it's good, but really would like to see government moving with quite a lot of speed to implement them. We've had good promises before and then been disappointed. But overall, it is a positive commitment by the President to moving the economy forward.
All right, so many people watching this will say, spoken like a true alliance partner. The opposition parties are all saying this is all cosmetic and lacking in detail. Have they got it wrong?
I think the opposition parties do have it wrong, and that's why voters have never supported them in this, 6 elections since 1994. But look, where we would agree with is that we do need more details. We appreciate that a State of the Nation address gives an overall vision. We would have hoped for a little bit more details, a little bit more time frames and so on, but we do appreciate that many of those details will actually be fleshed out in the budget speech coming up in 2 weeks' time, but equally in each department's individual budget speech. And that's where the President needs to be very firm and decisive in holding individual ministers to account. We've got too many ministers who are simply passengers who need to be released, and I think the President must hold the whip, because what is also important to appreciate is that workers, pensioners, voters at large are tired. They need a sense of hope. They need to see things moving. It's not sustainable to have a 40% unemployment rate. We cannot equally move forward if Eskom, the SOEs, are on the verge of collapse. Equally, the public is frustrated to see that we lose about 10% of our budget every year to wasteful expenditure and corruption, and we've not seen enough people going to prison. So the speech is positive, but we really need to see much more decisive action by the state.
All right. You talked about the turning around of SOEs and some of the initiatives on the table, but there are concerns, particularly around Eskom, about job losses. Is that something that you would accept might be a possibility, or you're going to fight tooth and nail to make sure that nobody loses their jobs there, and in which case it may be harder to turn around this SOE in particular, but others as well that are facing the same challenges of some would describe as bloated staff complements?
Look, we're in a 40% unemployment rate. We cannot resolve our unemployment crisis by throwing more workers under the bus into the unemployment queue. It's not workers' fault that management, that politicians, that business leaders looted the state to the point of collapse. So it shouldn't be workers who made to pay the sacrifice. Those workers have a valuable contribution to make. They've got families to take care of. We think if we are creative as government, as labour, as business, we can solve our problems. And that is why Cosatu has proactively intervened at Eskom, not only to save those 46,000 workers' jobs at Eskom, but in fact all 60 million jobs across the economy. We have to be creative. We're not going to solve problems by making things worse. We do accept that, for example, you might find some parts have a surplus amount of staff, but you find other parts of the state or the SOEs have a shortage of those staff or skills. So we can look at reskilling workers, redeploying them, but we cannot accept any worker to be retrenched. And really it's quite immoral that business in the mining industry, where CEOs get paid 150 million rand a year, retrench thousands of workers. You have the 5 big banks where each CEO earns 150,000 rand every single day, yet they're all retrenching thousands of bank workers. Equally, the CEO of Telkom makes about 12 million rand a year or something, and now he wants to retrench 3,000 workers. So it is really unacceptable that we have rich leaders who simply throw workers under the bus. And equally, you need to find that the shareholders, for example, like the PIC, which has shares in Telkom, needs to also come to the party and tell those companies where they invest, that this is workers' money, and they must stop retrenching workers.
All right, and perhaps finally, what's the most important question that you would love to pose to the President next week in his question and answer session debating the SONA budget? I mean, SONA presentation.
Look, I think the main thing we really would want to hear is a stimulus plan. What are we going to inject into the economy to get it moving? You cannot sit at 0% growth and think things are going to improve. You need to see decisive action, and we would really want to see a shifting of funds within government to drive that stimulus program. But also, what is the President doing to engage with business to get off the investment strike, to release funds to help grow the economy? If we can grow the economy, then we can reduce unemployment and we can solve all or many social economic crises.
All right, Matthew Parks, Cosatu Parliamentary Coordinator, thanks very much indeed for your time and sharing your thoughts with us. All right, and that's where we'll leave that for the time being.